Hey, hello. And if you're new here, welcome to my channel. And as you can see from the title, today we're talking about The Shining. And in particular, we're going to do a bit of a deep dive on that word we see in the later part of the film that we see in a mirror. And of course, I'm talking about Redrum, which we are seeing backwards, if you will, or at least the mirror image of the word Danny has written on the door. He almost seems like he's in a trance when he does it, which has led me to see a rather strange connection to another iconic film, and we'll talk about that, as well as the role that mirrors seem to play in this film. So let's get started. Now, of course, the film starts with these winding mountain roads as Jack heads up to the overlook for a job interview about being the winter caretaker. But back at the Torrance apartment, we meet Wendy and Danny. And when we see Danny in the bathroom, we get our first scene involving a mirror or a mirror image. And this is when Danny is actually talking to his imaginary friend, Tony. And he actually has his first Shining episode, seeing the elevator and the twins from the Overlook Hotel. Also, seeing an image of these twins in front of a mirror is a first clue that mirror images play an important role in this film. Now, in the scene where the doctor comes over to examine Danny after his Shining episode, she explains to Wendy that Danny's episodes could be explained by auto hypnosis or a self induced trance. But I have never bought this explanation as to why Danny has an imaginary friend or has Shining episodes. Later events in the film have led me to believe that rather than self hypnosis, it is more likely a concept called spirit binding that can explain some of what's happening with Danny. And indeed, we can see these sort of manifestations in other films too, involving a spirit that may have found its way into someone's life. But we may also see Danny experiencing some actual telepathy with Mr. Halloran, as both have the shining ability. But we'll talk more about spirit binding later. First, I wanted to talk about the role that mirrors or mirror images play in The Shining, often involving either Jack or Danny. As you can see here, as Jack is in the hallway outside the gold room, this is just after Jack and Wendy have a heated argument near the typewriter, and she accuses him of hurting Danny. We then get several interesting shots of Jack in front of mirrors. See his reflection on the left? But when Jack gets to the last mirror in front of the gold room, his reflection is no longer seen in the mirror. It's like his mirror image no longer exists, as he's about to enter into the strange gold room, where Jack sits down in front of what I'm calling the magic mirrors here, and he wishes for a drink. And then Lloyd the bartender appears out of nowhere and gives Jack a drink. Later in the film, after Jack has been locked in the storeroom by Wendy, we see Danny, as if in a trance, saying the word Redrum over and over again. We then see Danny take Wendy's lipstick and write the word Redrum on the door. As Wendy wakes up in shock, she sees in the mirror's reflection that Redrum is actually murder spelled backwards, a warning spelled out in the mirror because just then Jack starts hacking at the door with an axe. He's snapped and going after Wendy and Danny, who have to hide in the bathroom. But if we could go back for one moment to how Danny was acting when he appeared to be in a trance, because for someone who also has an imaginary friend and enters into trance states, I think we may have to look at a phenomenon called spirit binding. So let's take a look at that next. So, what exactly is spirit binding, and what does it have to do with the shining? Well, spirit binding is a belief that involves spirits or ghosts and their powers, and certain people make pacts with these spirits, such as a shaman, who may use the powers of the spirit in their spells and rituals. But there is also something called a possession pact, in which a spirit occupies someone else's body for some purpose. We saw something similar happen in The Exorcist, when Regan is possessed by a demon named Pazuzu. In fact, there are a couple of similarities between The Shining and The Exorcist. Another similarity involves Danny and Regan from The Exorcist playing games, and how this might explain the possession or trance states we see later. In The Exorcist, we see Regan playing the Ouija board, talking to spirits, innocently at first, but since Regan is actually talking to a demon named Pazuzu, you could say the Ouija board leads into her actual possession by the demon and horrible transformation. Now, in The Shining, we see Danny playing a game of darts by himself, or so he thinks. But when he turns around, he is confronted by the creepy twins, obviously spirits that inhabit the Overlook. Though I think they are here trying to warn Danny and don't really mean him any harm. And another similarity between The Exorcist and The Shining involves what I'll call the trance states we see both Regan and Danny in. Of course, Regan enters what look like seriously deep trance states during her possession, but it's definitely not to her benefit. We see Danny enter a trance like state, especially in the scene where he keeps saying Redrum over and over again. But who might be temporarily possessing him right here, if indeed that is what is happening? Well, of course, it could be the spirit of the twins, who I feel are actually trying to warn Danny of danger. And it could also be Danny's imaginary friend, Tony, since if Tony is not just a manifestation of Danny's mind, he might be a helpful spirit of some kind that has binded to Danny. And it might even be Mr. Halloran using his shining ability to warn Danny and Wendy. So, to sum up, we took a look at that strange Redrum scene in The Shining today and the possible meaning of the scene. But the first thing that jumps out at you is that we see Redrum as a reflection in a mirror, a warning of trouble, and mirrors and reflections are all over The Shining, so it's important. Literally, the opening scene shows mountains reflected in a lake. And remember, we see another mirror in that green bathroom scene when Jack kisses a beautiful woman who turns into a hag. So the mirror image can be quite opposite of what we're shown, as Redrum is opposite to the actual word murder. It is also possible that Danny is in a trance of some kind in the Redrum scene, the same way that Regan in The Exorcist is, although hers is definitely not benign, since it involves a demon. Danny's trance is possibly influenced by the ghostly twins, who earlier appeared to him in a Shining episode with the River of Blood, which I think was a warning. So, although the Redrum scene seems simple, it may actually be a reference to deeper concepts involving spirit possession. Well, that's my new video, all about the Redrum scene in The Shining. I hope you liked it. I will have a new video next week, but I'm going to upload it on Thursday because I won't be around Friday. Also, a big thank you to my awesome comment section. I appreciate what you have to say. Also, YouTube does have that new hype button on the mobile app, and if you click it, it does help small channels like mine. And as always, it would be great if you did hit that subscribe button and liked the video. But either way, my name is Shim. Thank you for spending time with me, and have a great day.